My name is Mira Langford. I am 34 years old, and I work nights as a 911 dispatcher outside Milwaukee. So I thought I understood what real panic sounded like. I was wrong. At 5 in the morning, 3 weak knocks pulled me out of a dead sleep. They were not loud enough to be a threat, but they were slow enough to make my chest tighten before I even reached the hallway. I grabbed my phone, checked the porch camera, and saw a small figure standing under the light, swaying like one more gust of wind would knock him down. When I opened the door, my nephew Noah was on my porch in a thin hoodie, soaked sneakers and sweatpants, stiff with cold. His lips were blue. His fingers were curled against his chest. The air outside was 32 degrees, but the wind made it feel sharper, meaner, like it had teeth. I pulled him inside before his knees gave out. He tried to speak, but his jaw shook so hard the words came out broken. They left me. Grant changed the code. I wrapped him in blankets, warmed his chest first, and called for an ambulance with the same calm voice I used at work, even though rage was already burning through me. Noah kept apologizing as if surviving had somehow made him guilty. While I checked his pulse, my phone buzzed with a message from Celeste, asking if I had seen him, followed seconds later by Grant accusing me of taking his son. I looked at my doorbell camera, then at the freezing child on my couch, and I did not answer either of them. I saved one file and sent it straight to Officer Nolan Price. Before I tell you what happened after that, tell me where you are and what the weather is like where you live. I want to know how far this truth can travel. The ambulance smelled like rubber antiseptic, and winter air trapped inside wet clothes. Noah sat wrapped in 2 thermal blankets, his hands shaking so badly the EMT had to hold the warm pack near his chest instead of letting him grip it. I sat beside him, one hand on his shoulder, listening to the monitor beep, while forcing myself to breathe like this was just another emergency call, and not my own family falling apart in front of me. Officer Nolan Price followed us to the hospital, and waited until the EMT said Noah was stable enough to answer basic questions. He crouched near the stretcher and spoke softly, but Noah still flinched at the uniform. I told him he was safe. That was the first time his eyes filled with tears. Not when his feet were burning from the cold. Not when the nurse cut off his wet socks. Only when I said safe. He whispered that Grant and Celeste had left the house at 4:12 the previous afternoon for a corporate Super Bowl retreat in Wisconsin Dells. Grant told him there was frozen food in the garage freezer, and that they would be home before 10:30. Celeste told him not to be dramatic, paused the internet on his tablet, and said 10-year-olds needed to learn independence. Noah said he watched them drive away in a black SUV while the porch light stayed on like the house was pretending someone still cared. Around 8:30, his stomach started hurting because he had not eaten a real meal all day. He tried the refrigerator first, but there was only sparkling water, beer, and a container of old takeout that smelled sour when he opened it. So, he went into the garage to find the freezer meal Grant mentioned. The garage door into the house shut behind him. When he tried to go back inside, the smart lock flashed red. He typed the code again. Red again, red. He called Grant 3 times and Celeste twice, but nobody answered. Then his phone died. He waited in the garage because he was terrified Grant would come home angry if he called 911. At first, he sat on an old moving blanket near the freezer. Then he curled up beside a stack of tires. The cold came through the concrete floor and climbed into his bones. By 4:10 in the morning, he said he could not feel his toes anymore. That was when he chose the only person he thought might open a door for him. He walked almost 2 miles to my apartment through icy sidewalks, and wind strong enough to push him into the street. Every few minutes he stopped under a porch light because he thought if he fell in the dark, nobody would see him. By the time we reached St. Agnes Medical Center, his body temperature was low enough for the doctor to say the words moderate hypothermia. Dr. Adrian Cole examined him and found dehydration, exhaustion, early frost nip on his toes, and bruises on his shins that Noah claimed came from bumping into things in the dark. The nurse asked when he last ate a full meal. Noah looked at me before answering yesterday at school. That answer changed the room. Officer Price stopped writing for half a second, then pressed his pen harder into his notebook. Dr. Cole ordered blood work, warming treatment, and a full pediatric evaluation. When the nurse stepped out, Noah grabbed my sleeve with weak fingers and whispered, "Please do not let Dad be mad at me." I looked at this child who had nearly frozen because the adults in his life cared more about a party than a pulse. And I told him the only truth I could promise. This is not your fault, not 1 second of it. My phone buzzed again. Grant had sent 5 messages, each one angrier than the last. Celeste sent one that said, "We know you have him, Mira, do not make this ugly." I looked at Officer Price, opened the doorbell file, and sent it to him without saying another word. He watched the first 10 seconds. Then his face went still in a way I recognized from emergency calls, where the operator suddenly understands the situation is worse than reported. He asked if I had any more evidence. I said, "Not yet." Then the automatic hospital doors opened down the hall, and Grant and Celeste walked in wearing yesterday's party clothes, looking furious instead of afraid. Grant saw me before he saw Noah. That told me everything I needed to know. A father whose child had been found freezing should have run toward the treatment room. Grant adjusted his expensive coat, scanned the hall for police, and walked straight toward me like I was the emergency he needed to control. Celeste came behind him in heeled boots and a cream-colored coat that looked too clean for someone who had supposedly been searching all morning. Her makeup was smudged, but not from crying. It looked like the kind of smudging that came from sleeping in a car after too many drinks. Grant snorts lowered his voice when he reached me. "What did you tell them? Not is he okay? Not where is my son? What did you tell them?" I stared at him until the silence made him uncomfortable. Celeste stepped around him and pressed a hand to her chest, already performing for the nurses watching from the station. "We have been terrified," she said loud enough for the hallway to hear. "Noah gets confused when he is upset. He runs away sometimes." That was the first lie. Officer Price appeared at my side and asked them to come with him to a private consultation room. Grant smiled with all his teeth and said this was a family misunderstanding. Then he turned to the nurse and said Noah had always been sensitive, always looking for attention, always dramatic when told no. I watched the nurse's face harden. Medical staff can smell a lie when it walks in wearing cologne. Celeste took out her phone and pretended to text. But I saw the red recording circle reflected in the glass behind her. She was filming. Grant leaned closer to me while Officer Price spoke to another nurse. "You have no idea what you just started," he whispered. "You live alone in a one-bedroom apartment and answer phones for a living. You think a judge is going to hand you my son because he threw a tantrum and got cold?" My hands wanted to shake, so I folded them behind my back. He kept going. "You were always jealous. Jealous of the house. Jealous of the money. Jealous that Dad trusted me with the family investments, and not you?" I almost laughed. Our father had trusted Grant because Grant had convinced a dying man that confidence was the same as character. Celeste raised her voice near the nurse's station, saying she could not believe a relative would weaponize a child against his own parents. Then she posted the video. I knew because my phone started vibrating with notifications from people I had not spoken to in years. Her story showed her tearful face in the hospital hallway with the caption, "Some people wait for a family crisis so they can steal what they could never build." She did not use my full name yet, but she did not have to. Grant saw the notifications and smiled like he had just regained control. Then Noah's door opened. Dr. Cole stepped out and told them Noah was not ready for visitors until CPS and police completed the first assessment. Grant's mask slipped. "CPS?" he said too sharply. "Why is CPS involved?" Officer Price answered before the doctor could. "Because your 10-year-old son was found on a porch at 5 in the morning, showing signs of hypothermia, after being locked out of his home for several hours." Grant pointed at me. "She took him. She has always wanted to make me look bad." She had the camera ready. "Ask her why he went to her house, and not a neighbor." I felt every eye turn toward me, but I did not defend myself. Not because I was weak, because I had learned from years of 911 calls that guilty people talk themselves into corners when you let them fill the silence. Celeste walked to Noah's door and tried to push past the nurse, calling his name in a syrupy voice that made my skin crawl. Noah heard her and started crying inside the room. Not a loud cry, a scared, broken sound. Dr. Cole blocked the doorway with his body and told her to step back. She snapped. "I am his mother," Dr. Cole said, "then act like it and stop recording in my hallway." Celeste froze. Officer Price looked at her phone. "Are you live streaming or recording this interaction?" he asked. She denied it too fast. He told her to put the phone away. Grant's voice went cold. "This is harassment. I know people. I have attorneys." Officer Price looked at him and said, "You are going to need them." That was when a woman in a navy coat appeared beside the nurse's station carrying a leather folder. She introduced herself as Monica Raines from Child Protective Services. She did not smile at Grant. She did not soften for Celeste. She said the hospital report, police report, and child statement were enough to trigger an emergency home assessment. Grant's face changed from anger to calculation. Celeste's changed from performance to panic. Monica looked at both of them and said, "We are going to your house now." Grant tried to stop the home assessment before it began. He said the house was private property. He said Noah had exaggerated. He said he wanted his lawyer present. Monica Raines listened with the patience of a woman who had heard every version of the same excuse, then told him emergency protective protocol allowed CPS to evaluate the home environment when a child was hospitalized after suspected neglect. Officer Price stood beside her without blinking. Grant finally handed over the address with the stiff movements of a man used to opening doors for guests, not investigators. I was not allowed to go inside during the official search, so I waited at the hospital with Noah, while the people who could change his future walked into the house where he had been taught to feel like a burden. Later, Monica's report would describe it in clean, professional language. But Officer Price told me enough to understand the truth. From the outside, Grant's house looked perfect. Smart cameras above the garage, heated driveway, frost-free windows, a kitchen large enough to host 30 people, a wine wall glowing like a museum display. But the refrigerator was nearly empty. 2 bottles of champagne, 6 cans of hard seltzer, a jar of olives, expired creamer, and half a plastic container of noodles so old the lid had bowed. The pantry had protein powder, cocktail mixers, stale crackers, and nothing that looked like food for a child. Noah's room was worse because it was not messy in the normal way children's rooms are messy. It was empty. A mattress on the floor, 1 thin blanket, a laundry basket with clothes too small for him, no winter coat in his size, no books except school workbooks with blank pages, a cracked lamp. Monica photographed everything. Then she found the garage. It had no working heat, just a space heater unplugged on a shelf, still wrapped in plastic like it had been purchased for appearances. The interior door had a smart lock. The side door had a manual bolt mounted too high for Noah to reach without climbing. There were scratches near the frame, small marks at child height, like someone had tried to pull it open more than once. Officer Price went next door to speak to the neighbor, Arthur Bell, a retired postal worker who had lived on that street long enough to know which family smiled in public and screamed behind glass. Mr. Bell said he had seen Noah alone many nights, while Grant and Celeste were out. He had watched the boy drag recycling bags full of bottles to the curb before school. Once he saw Noah sitting on the front steps eating peanut butter from a spoon. When he asked if everything was okay, Noah said Celeste forgot groceries, but Dad said delivery was too expensive for lazy people. Mr. Bell had reported concern to the school once, but Grant showed up in a suit and made everyone feel foolish for questioning him. The school records matched. Missed lunches, tired in class, no winter gloves, repeated notes about Noah smelling like smoke after weekends even though Grant insisted nobody smoked in the house. By noon, Monica returned to the hospital with a face that gave away nothing, and a file that gave away everything. She told me Noah would remain under emergency protective custody, and that kinship placement would be considered, but only if my home passed inspection immediately. Immediately meant no time to panic, no time to cry, no time to wonder if I was ready to become the only safe adult in a child's life. My apartment had 1 bedroom, a sagging couch, a kitchen table with 1 chair, and boxes I had never unpacked after my last move. It was warm. It was clean. But warm and clean were not enough for CPS. Noah needed a bed, clothing, food, locked medications, safe storage, school supplies, and proof I could provide stability. I stepped into a quiet corner of the hospital hallway and opened my banking app. The number on the screen looked insulting. I had savings, but not enough for a lawyer and a home setup. So, I made the list. My old Honda first. I could take the bus to work. The camera I used for weekend photography second. The guitar my father left me third. That one hurt. It had been the only thing of his Grant never tried to claim, but a guitar cannot keep a child warm. A memory can sit in a closet. Noah could not sleep in the cold. By 3:00 p.m., I had sold the camera to a coworker, posted the car online, and called Diana Vale, a family attorney whose name people said in low voices because she was expensive and frighteningly good. Her receptionist told me the consultation fee alone was more than my rent. I said I would be there before closing. At 5 p.m., I walked into Diana's office with medical notes, screenshots of Celeste's post, the doorbell video, and a promise to pay the retainer by morning. Diana watched the first 30 seconds of the footage without moving. When Noah's voice shook through my phone saying change the code, she paused the video and looked up. She said, "Get the smart lock logs. If they exist, your brother is finished." That night, I assembled a twin bed with blistered hands, stocked my refrigerator until the shelves looked like a promise, and placed a blue blanket at the foot of the bed, because Noah had once told me blue made him feel calm. I slept 30 minutes on the floor beside it, then woke to a call from Diana. Her voice was sharp, alert, almost satisfied. "Mira," she said. "The lock company responded to the emergency subpoena request. You need to hear this." The first thing Diana told me was not to react emotionally when I heard the data. That was how I knew it was bad. She had spent 22 years in family court. If she was warning me to stay calm, the truth was worse than what Noah had already survived. The smart lock company had preserved the activity logs before Grant could delete anything from the app. At 9:47 p.m., while Grant and Celeste were at the resort in Wisconsin Dells, the front door code was changed remotely from Grant's phone. The old code, the one Noah knew, was removed. A new code was created. There was no record of the new code being shared with Noah's device. At 10:11 p.m. the old code was entered at the garage interior door. Denied. At 10:14 entered again. Denied. Entered again. After that, nothing until 4:58 a.m. when my doorbell camera caught Noah stumbling onto my porch. Diana let the silence sit long enough for the facts to settle into my bones. Then she said, "This was not a malfunction. This was not a confused child. This was an adult changing access to the home and failing to protect the child inside it." I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I looked at Noah, asleep in the hospital bed, one hand tucked under his cheek, his face younger in sleep than it had looked awake. No child should have to look relieved inside a hospital. Officer Price came to collect the formal copy of the logs that afternoon. He watched the time-stamped entries, then replayed my doorbell footage. The camera had caught more than I remembered. Noah's voice was faint but clear. He said they left me. He said Grant changed the code. He said I tried and it would not open. The file I sent the police was no longer just proof that Noah came to me alone. It was the first honest testimony of a child before adults could scare him into silence. Grant and Celeste must have sensed the ground moving under them because Celeste changed tactics by sunset. She went live from her mother's guest room. Face pale, eyes red, hair arranged to look messy, but still perfect. I watched only because Diana told me to record everything. Celeste told thousands of followers that her family was being torn apart by a bitter relative who had always hated her marriage. She said Noah was a sensitive child being manipulated by a woman desperate to feel important. She said Grant was a loving father, a provider, a man being punished because he trusted modern technology, and technology sometimes failed. The comments split in real time. Some called her brave. Some asked why she had been at a resort while her son froze. Celeste cried harder when the questions got sharper. Then she said my name, full name, workplace, city. She told people to pray, that I would develop a conscience and return a child to his real family. Within an hour, my work phone started receiving calls. People called me a kidnapper, a liar, a lonely woman stealing another woman's son. One caller said dispatchers like me should not be allowed near children. My supervisor, Rebecca Sloan, pulled me into her office before my shift and closed the door. I expected fear. I expected distance. Instead, she put a printed copy of Celeste's post on the desk and said our legal department is already preserving this. You are not being suspended. You are being protected. For the first time in 2 days, I almost cried. But the real turn came from someone I had never met. At 11:36 that night, Diana forwarded me a voicemail from a man named Trevor Mills, one of Grant's co-workers who had attended the resort retreat. His voice shook. He said Grant had been drinking near the bar during the halftime show, laughing about his smart home system. Grant bragged that he could change every lock in his house from 200 miles away. Someone joked that his kid must feel like a prisoner. Grant replied, "Only when he forgets who pays for the house." Then he opened the app and changed the code while people watched. Trevor said he thought Grant was just showing off. He did not know Noah was home alone. He did not know the child would be locked out of warmth until the story broke. Diana moved fast by morning. She had Trevor's sworn statement, the smart lock logs, my doorbell footage, Dr. Cole's medical report, Monica's CPS findings, and Celeste's live stream at the emergency hearing. Grant arrived with a lawyer who looked expensive enough to make normal people nervous. Celeste wore a black dress and held tissues like props. They expected a debate. Diana gave them a timeline. 4:12 p.m., parents leave. 9:47 p.m., Grant changes code remotely. 10:11 p.m., child denied entry. 10:58 a.m., child appears on my porch in medical distress. The courtroom went silent at the speaker. Grant did not. He stared at the screen like he hated the camera for telling the truth. The judge granted temporary placement with me, barred Grant and Celeste from contacting Noah, and ordered them not to discuss him or me publicly. Celeste nodded like she understood. 3 hours later, she posted another video saying corrupt people were stealing her son. By dinner, Officer Price called me and said Celeste had violated the protective order. By midnight, the woman who called me toxic in a hospital hallway was in handcuffs. The main hearing happened 6 weeks later on a morning so cold, the courthouse windows looked silver around the edges. Noah asked if he had to see Grant. I told him no. Diana told him the judge had arranged for him to wait in a separate room with a child advocate unless he chose otherwise. Noah nodded, holding the blue stress ball Dr. Cole had given him during a follow-up appointment. He did not choose to enter the courtroom. I was grateful. Children should not have to sit in front of adults and prove their pain is real. Grant and Celeste were already seated when I walked in. Grant wore a charcoal suit, but the confidence that used to make him look powerful now looked brittle. Celeste wore soft beige and no makeup except mascara. The kind of look designed to whisper innocent without saying it. Their lawyer opened by calling the incident a tragic misunderstanding caused by technology, weather, and a frightened child who made a poor decision. Diana did not object. She simply wrote something on her notepad and waited. When it was her turn, she stood with no drama at all. That was what made her terrifying. She did not raise her voice. She did not insult them. She built a cage out of facts and let Grant walk into it. First came Dr. Cole, who explained Noah's hypothermia, dehydration, and exhaustion. He testified that a healthy 10-year-old does not reach that condition from a brief walk in cold weather. The symptoms were consistent with prolonged exposure before the walk began. Grant's lawyer tried to suggest Noah was fragile or unusually sensitive. Dr. Cole looked at him and said, "Cold affects children faster than adults, but neglect affects them before the weather ever gets a chance." Then came Monica Raines. She described the refrigerator, the garage, the lock, the mattress, the lack of suitable clothes, the school concerns, and the neighbor statement. Grant stared at the table during most of it. Celeste dabbed her eyes whenever the judge looked in her direction. Monica did not care. She said the home was financially wealthy and functionally unsafe. That sentence landed harder than any insult could have. Arthur Bell testified next. His hands shook slightly as he described seeing Noah take bottles to the recycling machine and sit outside the grocery store eating cheap sandwiches like he was hiding from shame. He said he had heard loud parties, seen snorts, Grant's SUV leave late, and watched Noah shovel snow alone before school. When Grant's lawyer asked why he did not intervene sooner, Arthur's voice broke. He said, "Because they made me feel like I was imagining it. That is what people with nice houses know how to do." The judge wrote that down. Then Diana called Trevor Mills. Grant's face changed. It was the first time he looked afraid. Trevor testified that Grant had changed the smart lock code from the resort bar, showed the app to coworkers, and joked about controlling his house from anywhere. Grant's lawyer tried to frame it as a demonstration unrelated to Noah. Diana displayed the log on the courtroom screen. The timestamp matched Trevor's statement. The location data matched the resort. The failed attempts matched Noah's timeline. Diana asked Trevor if Grant appeared sober enough to understand what he was doing. Trevor hesitated, then said Grant was drunk, but not confused. He knew he was changing the code. He just did not care what happened. Who came next? The video filled the screen with her tearful face, her accusations, my name, my workplace, and her request that followers pressure the people helping me. Diana paused on the moment Celeste called me unstable. Then she displayed the protective order signed 3 hours before Celeste posted again. The judge asked Celeste if she understood the order when she received it. Celeste whispered yes. "Then why did you violate it?" the judge asked. Celeste said she was emotional. The judge said emotion is not an exemption from a court order. Grant finally spoke when the judge asked him directly why Noah had not been given the new code. He said, "My son knew better than to go outside. He should have stayed where he was." The courtroom seemed to inhale at once. Diana looked at him. "Where was he supposed to stay, Mr. Langford?" Grant's mouth tightened in the garage until we got back. Diana waited 1 perfect second, in an unheated garage in freezing weather from 1000 p.m. until morning. Grant realized what he had admitted, but it was too late. The judge leaned back, eyes cold. "Mr. Langford, your defense appears to be that your child should have endured the danger you created more quietly." That was the moment the room shifted. Grant's money, suit, job title, and polished voice could not reach him anymore. The truth had come out in front of everyone, and it was uglier than even his lies had suggested. The judge ruled that Noah would remain in my custody, that Grant and Celeste would have no unsupervised contact, and that CPS would move toward permanent termination of parental rights. Pending the criminal case, Grant slammed his hand on the table and said, "He is my son," from the side room through the cracked door. Noah's small voice answered before anyone could stop him. "Then why did you not open the door?" No one moved. Even Grant looked like the words had hit him physically. Celeste started sobbing, but nobody rushed to comfort her. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited because Celeste had made the case public herself. Grant tried to hide his face. Celeste tried to speak, but Officer Price stepped between her and the cameras. By that evening, Grant's company suspended him. By the end of the week, he was fired for using company-related smart home technology in conduct that endangered a child. Celeste lost brand deals one by one. The followers who had once praised her perfect stepmom image dug through old videos and noticed what everyone had missed before. Noah in the background making dinner. Noah carrying laundry. Noah flinching when Grant raised his voice. Their perfect family brand collapsed because the truth did not need to scream. It only needed to be played once in court. The criminal case took 8 months. And during those 8 months, Noah learned how slowly safety can become believable. At first, he slept with his shoes beside the bed, then under the bed, then across the room. Then one night, I found them in the closet where shoes belonged, and I stood in the hallway with tears in my eyes because healing does not always announce itself. Sometimes it looks like a child finally believing he will not have to run before sunrise. Grant took a plea deal after Diana filed a civil claim that would have exposed even more financial records, messages, and witness statements. He pleaded guilty to child endangerment, criminal neglect, and witness intimidation. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in county custody, 5 years of supervised probation after release, mandatory parenting accountability classes, and no contact with Noah unless a future court approved it. Celeste pleaded guilty to child endangerment, violation of a protective order, and civil defamation. She received 9 months in custody, 3 years of probation, a public retraction, and a financial judgment for the damage she caused when she sent strangers after my workplace and my reputation. Both of them lost parental rights permanently. Grant's house was sold. The wine wall, the heated driveway, the smart cameras, the perfect kitchen where no one cooked for Noah. All of it became numbers on legal paperwork. A trust was created for Noah's education, therapy, medical care, and future housing. The same technology Grant bragged about became the evidence that helped fund the child he failed. I expected to feel victory when the sentence was read. I did not. What I felt was relief so deep it made my hands go numb. Revenge. Real revenge was not watching Grant lower his head while the bailiff led him away. It was watching Noah sit beside me without flinching when the courtroom door closed. It was knowing he would never again have to apologize for being hungry, cold, scared, or alive. 2 months later, I signed the final custody papers. My name looked strange beside the word guardian, like the law had finally caught up with what my heart had decided at 5 in the morning. With help from the settlement and the trust structure approved by the court, I moved us into a small 2-bedroom house on a quiet street near Noah's school. It was not fancy. The kitchen cabinet stuck in humid weather. The backyard fence needed repair. The porch light flickered if the wind hit it wrong, but the heat worked. The refrigerator stayed full. The door opened from the inside. Noah chose the smaller bedroom because it faced the backyard, and he said he liked being able to see the maple tree. I painted the walls blue. He pretended not to care, then spent 20 minutes deciding exactly where his baseball poster should go. Therapy was not easy. Some weeks he barely spoke. Some weeks he asked questions that broke my heart in ways I could not show. Why did Grant hate me? Was Celeste ever really my mom? If I had stayed in the garage, would they have come back before I died? I never lied to him, but I never gave him cruelty as an answer either. I told him broken adults sometimes blame children for the emptiness they refuse to fix. I told him none of it was his fault. I told him love is not proven by blood, money, posts, or last names. Love is proven by responsibility. Slowly, Noah became a child again. He joined a local baseball team and struck out his first 3 games. then hit a double so clean his coach lifted him off the ground. He stopped hiding granola bars in his backpack. He started inviting friends over. The first time he asked if we could order pizza just because it was Friday. I said yes so fast he laughed. That laugh filled the kitchen better than any expensive furniture ever could. On the anniversary of that night, I woke before dawn, afraid the memory would swallow the whole house. Instead, I found Noah in the kitchen making toast. He looked up and said, "I am okay, Aunt Mira." Then he corrected himself almost shyly. "I mean, I am home." That was the ending Grant and Celeste never understood. They thought family was ownership. They thought a child was someone to control, display discipline and silence. But family is not the person who locks the door and calls it a lesson. Family is the person who opens it and calls the police when the truth needs protection. The lesson I want every person hearing this to remember is simple. When a child shows signs of neglect, listen. When someone uses money, status, or social media to bury the truth, look closer. And when doing the right thing costs you comfort, reputation, or peace, remember that your courage may become someone else's first safe home. Blood can explain where you came from, but responsibility proves who deserves to stay. If someone in your own family tried to hide cruelty behind a perfect image, would you stay silent, or would you open the door and let the truth travel? We appreciate every viewer who supports this fictional run stories. This video was made only for entertainment, education, and reflective storytelling. We hope it reminds you that being underestimated can become the beginning of unforgettable comeback, especially when you stop asking others to believe in you and start believing in yourself.